Welcome back. Hard to believe that this is episode 10 of season 5.
Went fast.
This season went by really quickly. So welcome back. Good to have you with us again. And this time we're going to be talking about a movie that we have both loved for years. I don't know why it hasn't shown up before now, but before we get in today's movie, we got to do some quick cuts. So would you like to start us off with the quick cuts today?
Sure. I'm actually just doing a movie this time. No video games, no TV shows.
I'm so disappointed.
No franchise reviews.
So disappointed.
Just a movie. So yeah, I decided to do Speak No Evil. Partly because there's a remake coming out this year, an American remake. And chances are the original one's probably better. So this is directed by Christian Tardif, or Taftrup. Has an 84% critic score and only a 56% audience score.
Have you seen this?
Yeah, so it's my quick cut.
Oh, but you're talking about the original.
Oh, the original.
Oh, okay, sorry. I was going to I didn't even know the remake was out yet.
No, sorry.
Okay, gotcha.
No, I'm talking about the original.
Okay, gotcha.
Which I had watched later. You watched it.
I watched it, I think, before you. Yeah.
I referenced it one other episode, but not as a quick cut.
Yeah.
So a Danish family visits a Dutch family they have met on holiday, and what was supposed to be an idyllic weekend slowly starts unraveling as the Danes try to stay polite in the face of an unpleasantness. And I was just glued to this movie the whole time, like so gripping, so engaging, and so dark.
It's hard to watch. For me,
it is. It was
hard to watch.
The ending is pretty extreme.
Yeah.
And I think the reason I like it is I kind of relate to the flaw of the main character, because the whole theme of the film is sort of like people who are really polite and nice and let people push them around, which is not a problem for you, I don't think, in life. But it could. Yeah. I'm getting better. But it reminds me of this time I went to Cuba with our friends, and we were having a hard time finding our way into the city, and this guy pulled over. He's like, "Oh, here, I'll show you around." We're like, "Okay." And then he's like, "Oh yeah, here, give me some money and I'll go get some rum." And he comes back with like one for him and one for us. And I'm like, "Oh, let's go to this restaurant." He orders him like the most expensive meal for himself and a bunch of meals for his family.
Holy cow.
And we paid for it all. And we were with a friend and we're like, we should probably leave this guy.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh no, it's good. He's a local." And then eventually the cops pulled up behind us and the guy ran.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know if they knew if this is a normal thing or they knew this guy especially, but it kind of made me think of this movie where we were just too nice to basically tell the guy to go away, even though he was kind of taking advantage of us. So
super. I mean, not to get too far down the rabbit hole, but when I went to Cuba, I remember the reading that I did because I felt very safe in Cuba.
Yeah, no, me too.
They are very harsh on tourist crime.
Yes.
So if he was known to be gouging tourists in that way, they would not be happy.
No, he looked pretty scared. He ran away very quickly. So.
Yeah, I bet. Okay, so
the remake's coming out. I'm curious to see if it lives up to the original. I know you're dubious that it will.
Highly dubious.
But I love I think you should go see Speak No Evil.
So now, I mean, to be fair, it's not that I'm thinking about movies like The Ring and the remake and The Grudge and the remake, because there are a bunch of those, early J horrors that were remade.
Yeah.
Was it
or like Wreck or
Garth Drabinsky? Is that he made, I think it was The Ring. It's not that the remakes weren't good films, because I think it was Naomi Watts was in that one.
Mm-hmm.
They were good films on their own. They weren't good remakes in my opinion, because they didn't, in my opinion, capture the creepiness of the original. Like there's something about those early thousands J horrors that just make my spine tingle. So that's what I'm worried about, is that dark European outlook is going to be lost.
You and I were even noting in the trailer, they have changed a few things.
They've changed. Yeah.
So what's the main guy though? He's really good. James McAvoy.
Yeah.
I have a lot of faith in him. Like that gives me faith that it might be good because I really like him, but
that's true.
We'll have to see.
That's true. I mean, he's a good actor, and I think he will definitely bring something to the film. I just don't think, I mean, I will probably see it. And potentially we could even do an episode on that remake. But yeah, I mean, it's a good choice because that was a very, very dark film. It reminded me of Coming Home in the Dark.
Totally, yeah.
And those were both really hard to watch, but particularly
it's one of the most grim endings.
I couldn't believe it. I remember watching it going, holy cow, that's what they're going to do.
And I have some friends that are very sensitive to that style of horror. So if you don't like those very realistic, could totally happen to you, very dark, then maybe avoid it because it is very much unsettling.
Yeah, it's very unsettling and very dark, and it's very much it's not something that you can sort of pass off and say, well, I'm never going to meet a vampire anyway.
Exactly.
No, it hits because you think, holy cow, that could actually happen.
Yeah, it's pretty enthralling.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's my not so quick cut.
Oh, good for you. Yeah, that's a good one. So similar to Mike, in preparation for hopefully watching the first Omen
fun, yeah.
very soon, I went back and I actually haven't finished rewatching it, but I'm about halfway through the original Omen, 1976, which is directed by Richard Donner and stars Gregory Peck and Lee Remick. So it was interesting because I haven't seen this film in a long time. I rewatch The Exorcist probably every year, and Halloween and a couple other ones. This one I probably haven't seen. I couldn't tell you in how long. I watched it a few times. I've seen it more than once for sure. The movie itself, I think, still holds up. What I noticed my reaction to this time was the music in the film. And I found it very melodramatic, like very 70s. Sometimes 70s films can be like really great, like super gritty. And this one, because it was a very big budget. I mean, Gregory Peck and Lee Remick were huge stars at the time, particularly Gregory Peck. And there's some other people in there too that are name brand faces that you'll recognize. But yeah, it was just, the performances are good. That kid is still creepy.
Yeah.
AF. Like, I mean, he just gives me the willies just looking at him.
So you just found the music distracting or just overbearing?
Yeah, distracting in the sense that I don't know if I felt that it was incongruent with the scene. Like, it was cinematic, but it was like, orchestra strings and sometimes that can work. And the music that does work for me is kind of like the Halloween theme song where you get snippets of it here and there.
Yeah, it's not overplayed.
This one, when they're focusing on the kid, you get some nice some nice music there, but it was the background stuff. I think it was just the era that it was typical to have, like, you didn't have silence in film. There was either dialogue or music, or ambient sound. Whereas I think modern filmmakers are more willing to take a risk and have silence.
For sure, or very subtle.
Yes.
Like that, like big bass, and
yes,
we'll talk about the movie today.
Like the whoosh of a bass or something. Like, I think modern filmmakers, I think there's been an evolution of sound design.
And some cinema purists don't think there should be music at all. That it cheapens the cinematic experience. I don't agree with that. I think the soundtrack can really enhance.
I do too. I mean, my big beef with soundtracks is when it's telegraphing what they want you to experience. And horror films, or the horror genre, is often pretty bad at that. It's like, don't tell me ahead of time I should be scared now. Like, just do it and show me and make me scared. Don't make me think I should be scared. Totally. Right? So yeah, I did find, maybe distracting is the best word, but I do, if you haven't seen the original Omen, I would highly recommend it. I mean, it's a very good film. And if you're planning on seeing the remake or the update, the first Omen, then I would go back and watch this.
Was there another remake though?
There's been an Omen 2, and there was an Omen 3 with Sam Neill,
right? Where
I think it was the third, maybe it was the fourth, where he becomes that's the child has grown up and becomes president. Because I don't know if you remember the storyline.
That sounds bad.
Like, I think his name
is... The kid becomes the president?
Not the kid, but Sam Neill, he's grown up.
Right. Oh, okay.
Right, that kid. So I think it's Richard, but it might be something different. But his last name is Thorne, Gregory Peck's character. So he's supposed to have money, like he comes from wealth. He's the ambassador to Italy, and then as the film progresses, he becomes the ambassador for the UK and they move to London. So he's got a political family, and his son, Damien, has grown up in politics and eventually becomes the president, right? Of the United
I've seen The Omen. It was a couple years ago, though. I don't remember too much about it, but I've not seen the sequels.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I've heard the first Omen's supposed to be really good.
Yeah.
So I'm excited.
I've heard that too, which is why I thought, I wonder, I'd like to go back and rewatch, and then see what nods to the original they make. I highly doubt, well, first of all, I don't think Gregory Peck is alive. I don't think Lee Remick is either. So I don't think
AI know, it doesn't matter.
I don't think either one of them is going to show up in a cameo like Ellen Burstyn did in Exorcist Believer. Anyway, spoiler, if you haven't seen Exorcist Believer. So we're going to get into today's episode, which is one that probably should have happened in an earlier season, but it didn't. So here it is. We are looking at 2012's Sinister.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
New details today in the grisly murders of a local family found earlier this week.
I didn't want to move here.
We couldn't afford to live in the old house anymore. Plus, the new story I'm writing is here.
Is the story a good one this time?
I'm gonna write the best book that anybody's ever read. I got a really good feeling about this.
You gotta be kidding me. Family hanging out. Barbecue 79. That's the family who lived here.
The director is Scott Derrickson. Ethan Hawke plays Ellison. Juliette Rylance plays Tracy. And it's not a cameo, but it's a minor performance by Vincent D'Onofrio, who is really good as a professor in here. So as always, we're going to try to keep this spoiler free. And I'm just going to start with my little summary here. So Ethan Hawke plays a controversial true crime writer who finds a box of Super 8 home movies in the home he's just moved into, revealing that the murder case he is currently researching could be the work of an unknown serial killer whose legacy dates back decades. So that's the premise of the film, right? He is an author who, and one of the things I really like about the film is not only are there some great jump scares and there's just some fantastic things going on, but they're also, I feel, playing with this idea of Ethan Hawke's character who wrote like one, let's call it a good true crime novel. One hit. And he got a taste of that fame and attention. Yeah. And that's what he keeps driving for. I just need to get another one of those. And at
what cost?
Yeah, at what cost? And you can see the strain on the relationship with his wife and his children.
Yes.
And he's dragging them all over the country to these different places so he can write his book about true crime in that town.
Even in some of the places.
Even in some of the places, yeah.
Not just 2 or 3 doors down.
Like I find I really like a lot of what Ethan Hawke has done. I find his performances to be very grounded and very realistic. And I found this to be true here. Like I felt that he was vulnerable at times, but also very believable when he was scared, when he was driven, when I don't know if nostalgic's the right word, but he's looking back at videotapes of him being interviewed. And like, I just find he was very human. I could believe that this was a real person.
Yeah, I said the same thing, not just of him, but actually the whole family.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate I like Ethan Hawke in everything. I don't think I've really seen a bad movie.
I can't think of one.
Like, I think he's always very solid, but you're right. Like, very grounded. He doesn't do a lot of horror though, I don't think. Like, I almost wish he did more horror films because I can't think of any horror roles that he's been in. Well,
I guess it depends on whether you consider black box horror.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
I don't think you did.
No,
you didn't like that film, did you?
But no, he's very good. And I liked that there's a lot of tension between him and his wife.
Yes.
But I think a lot of films would just show that the relationship is devolving, but you can still tell that she cares about him and there's love and she wants the best for him and they have a good relationship, but it's strained.
Yeah.
Like it felt very authentic to me.
Me too.
And even like he has a good relationship with his kids, but he's always kind of like, yeah, thank you, honey. Thanks for the coffee. I got to go back to work.
Exactly.
So it felt very realistic about a guy who is like just prioritizing his career over his family.
Yeah.
But there is genuine connection there still.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I found the family dynamic to be really believable. Even like the sibling bickering and rivalry, I found that to be very believable. But I like what you said about the strained marriage, because it really does feel like his wife has made sacrifices for him to do what he wants to do. And she's getting kind of to the end of her rope. It's like, I don't know if I can do this anymore.
But you can see she still cares for him, wants the best for him. And she's like willing to hang in there with him, but he's making it pretty tough.
Yeah. I mean, and I also, I remember, I don't remember thinking this before, but this time it struck me that coffee scene where he kind of takes the coffee from his daughter and then like shoos her away. That was really heart wrenching because it was like, don't you realize what you're missing here?
Yes.
You know, having kids in their 20s and having, you know, missed certain aspects of their lives, you can't ever get that back. So as a parent, that was a little bit heartbreaking.
I found that too.
But
I'm guilty of that sometimes too, I think.
I think I don't know a parent that isn't.
For sure.
Because it's life, right? You've got all this stuff going on and you do want to be there for your kids, but you also have stuff that needs to happen. And
yeah, it's almost such a paradox. I find that whole thing. It's like, yes, you want to value your kids, but I can't just like sit on the floor all day and hang out with my kid and do nothing else and not go to work and get fired. And like, so it's always like, I get that that's the sentiment. Like, oh yeah, we just need to like spend all this time with our kids. But yeah, it's just, it's not realistic.
Yeah.
But it's finding that balance, the right balance where you're still enjoying them and spending time with them
For
and
sure.
not getting fired from your job.
And I mean, in terms of Ethan Hawke as a character, like I think one of the things that I related to, I mean, not that I researched true crime, but that idea of going down a rabbit hole and obsessing about things. I know you'll find this hard to believe, but when I want to buy gear, that's exactly I obsess over. Okay, I was talking anyway. It's a long story, but I was in this gear mode recently, and I literally, like, I'm not exaggerating, spent hours and hours reading reviews, watching YouTube videos. Is this going to work with this? Should I, get this, or should I spend more money and do this? What's the budget version of, like, it's ridiculous, but I totally get that obsession.
And he does it well. Like you can see he's like, they're at dinner and he's just like kind of itching to get back to his office and do his thing. So yeah, that was well done. I actually didn't realize it until I watched it this time, but I feel like there's a lot of parallels between this and The Shining.
Interesting. I see that.
I'd never seen that before. I'm like, oh, it's like they're both authors. They're both like trying to write their thing. They both end up moving into a house that's essentially haunted. They both like put their families through hell as they're like trying to do their thing. And I don't know why I never thought of it before, but I just realized like, oh yeah, that's
interesting.
Like, I wonder if this was inspired by The Shining at all, but
that is really interesting. I think the only significant difference, well, not the only, but a significant difference is that in The Shining, it's Jack Torrance's character. He's not doing any, like Ethan Hawke's Ellison's not doing anything to his family other than his work.
Not
directly.
Yeah, indirectly.
Yeah, he is indirectly. Yes. Now I really liked, like there was some really great visuals in this one, and I really like the 8mm aesthetic. Like these family movies.
They're creepy.
They're super creepy.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I grew up with those. I mean, you probably grew up in the video era.
Yeah, no Super 8 for me.
So I grew up, I mean, I don't have them anymore. I kind of regret when my dad died, not because he had boxes of these tapes when we were kids. I have the photo albums, but I didn't want to take all these tapes and the projector and all that kind of stuff. So I don't have any of it. but I remember we had a Super 8 projector and those little reels of film and all the rest of it. And not only was it nostalgic to watch that on film, but there's also a creepiness about the jitteriness of Super 8 and the fact that there's no sound.
It's
and there were, because it was challenging to actually edit those films. I mean, it could be done, but it wasn't easy to do. There was a lot of stopping and starting, right? So you would start a scene and stop it, and then it could be 3 days later before the next thing that you did. So there are all these like really weird jump cuts, and like things were just jittery, and it just wasn't a great technology. And typically, I mean, I have spliced film together. It's tedious and cumbersome and not a lot of fun. So my dad never edited movies. He might splice together several reels, but he never edited things out.
No.
So that also makes it really interesting to me when I watch the 8mm segments, that glitchiness and the silence. And I found there were elements of Seven coming up for me in this film.
Like, they're essentially snuff films.
Yeah.
And they have a raw just authenticity and realness to them. Except, did you get the sense that there was like soundtracks with them? Like, was that like there was music playing with the different videos, and I didn't get the sense whether the movie was playing that music or whether it was meant to be like it's part of the video. Because I feel like when they played it back, the music would play again. So I'm like, is Mr. Boogie there on like iMovie, like editing a soundtrack over? Like,
maybe he's
that took me out of it a little bit. I'm like, does that make sense?
That's interesting that you noticed that, because I'm actually trying to think back now. I did not notice that at all.
Oh, I think they each had a different soundtrack.
Oh, very cool. Because I was so focused on the visual, I wasn't listening to the auditory.
So this visual of Mr. Boogie with his, on his eye.
Because there was an old Mac in that one. That's pretty funny.
But you wouldn't even be able to do that, right? With Super 8, there's no sound. Or was there?
No, not typically. I believe that they did make very expensive cameras with sound, with microphones. But typically, I mean, we didn't have one for sure.
Right.
Go ahead.
My other niggle was, so he finds these tapes and he puts one in, and it's like a horrific murder. And then he waits 4 days to watch the next one. I'm like, there's no way in hell that you're not watching all these videos back to back. Don't you think?
You don't think that would like freak him out, and maybe he just left it for a few days?
I don't know. I feel like, whoa, there's all these tapes here. It's on YouTube, right? You go to the next one, the next video, the next video. Like, I was kind of like, there's no way you wouldn't be dying to know what's on those other tapes.
I don't know. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know that the algorithm was strong enough to draw him into the next one.
So you're saying he couldn't like he was emotionally distraught?
Yeah, I just felt like, I mean,
because he's so driven to write his book.
Yes, but watch his reaction when he's watching those films.
He's disturbed. Yeah,
he's disturbed, and you can see it's palpable how upset he is, and he's like swigging back the scotch, and at one point he starts smoking again, and okay, that's something that he does when he's really stressed out.
Yeah.
I felt like it was legit that you were absolutely horrified by what you saw, and it took a few days for you to get up the courage to watch the next one. Because I think after that, it's like the dominoes fall. Like then he starts getting into it, and it becomes obsessive for him.
Okay.
So I mean, we've talked about the performances. I liked the glitchy film thing. Like I found the very end of the film was very much like Seven for me. It was like that glitchy film sort of thing.
Yeah.
And the guy who plays, I mean, is this a spoiler to talk about? Well, you've already mentioned sort of the name, the B name. Should we wait for spoilers for that?
I guess there's no context. You wouldn't know. Yeah, maybe we'll talk about that more.
Okay, we'll wait in spoilers. And I also had another thing that I wanted to ask about.
Actually, I want to say, because you and I dump on jump scares a lot.
But
this movie, I feel like, does jump scares correctly. They're not cheap jump scares. They're actually, what's happening is scary, and they're very effective.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, there are jump scares, but I do think that they're done very well. And I feel like there's ones, like, is it a cat? Or no, it's a snake. He sees a snake when he goes up in the attic. Like, those are the kinds of things. Yeah, that would make me jump too.
Yeah.
I mean, this morning, my wife got up and I didn't hear her get up. And then she came back, I don't know how long later, to pick up the dog. But when I opened my eyes, I saw this, and I was like, ah! It really threw me for a loop. And she's like, I live here. This is my bedroom. So I can totally see, because, the first night he was there, he sees the scorpion.
Yeah.
And then he sees the snake, and there's all these weird things. He sees the dog outside when he goes to, and it's an added layer of discomfort, I feel, for the audience, that the son is having night terrors.
Definitely.
And
like, that was, because I feel like a lot of times they do that and they're like, oh, wakes up in a dream. But no, this kid is having like a terrifying night terror.
Yeah.
And if you've ever experienced a night terror, like, they're terrifying.
Yeah.
Like, do you have much experience with night terrors? Did your kids have them, or have you had them? Or
I'm trying to think. I don't remember having them,
because they're, like, for our audience who may not know, like, they're a real phenomenon.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's different than a nightmare, where kids wake up. Often kids, it can be adults. But normally when you have a nightmare, it's during your REM sleep cycle when you're about to wake up. But they've tracked that night terrors occur during your deep sleep. So you can't wake up from them. So, like, kids just scream at the top of their lungs, look absolutely horrified. It can go on for some time, and they're very difficult to wake up, unlike a nightmare.
Yeah.
I had a friend whose wife would have night terrors.
Oh, that'd be terrifying.
And he would wake up with her, like, on his chest, like, with her hands around his throat, like, screaming and having a night terror. I'm like, that sounds freaky.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've had night terrors, but I've had those dreams that you can't wake up.
That's different.
Yeah, that's different. Totally different. Do you remember this scene in Trainspotting?
Oh, I've not seen Trainspotting in like 20 years.
Oh, where the guys,
might still remember, but.
Well, do you remember when everybody's at breakfast and the guy brings the sheets down? He's like, no, I'll put them in the wash myself.
Oh, I don't actually.
And then I think it's the mom, like, so he's been drunk or on drugs or whatever, and he's crapped the bed.
Oh, okay.
And he realizes that he needs to throw them in the laundry, and the mom grabs them, and then the fecal matter goes everywhere. It's disgusting. Anyway, total aside. What I was going to say is, I don't believe I've been the victim of night terrors, but I have had dreams where I couldn't wake up.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I end up crying in my sleep. Like, they're an emotional dream about something, usually the death of a kid or something, right? Like, something that would really impact you emotionally.
Dropping your iPad.
Yeah, exactly. Not Apple not selling me things anymore. But yeah, having those dreams, I can't even imagine what it would be like if you're having those, like, we've all had nightmares, but where you couldn't wake up from it. I just can't imagine. I really like what they do in the film, where, first of all, the kid is asleep.
Yes. And
he barely wakes up at one point, and they put him back to, like, you're not even aware of what your body's doing. Cause he, at one point, and it's kind of creepy, cause he goes inside a box.
Yes.
And, the dad is first of all, doesn't realize his kid's inside the box. So now he's freaking out, as I think most of us would be. It's like, what is in that box and why is it moving? And then there's a second instance where the kid ends up outside that he has to go bring him. And yeah, it's very heart-wrenching, but it's also very much like, it just sets that tone of fear without really knowing what you're being afraid of.
Yes.
Right. So it gets that whole adrenaline thing in the audience going, I think, very cleverly, because there's nothing really that you can point to say, this is what's scaring me. But in terms of tone, I remember seeing this the first time and was absolutely blown away.
Same. And conversely to that, to the jump scares and the terror, there's some really funny, really nice bits of comedic dialogue in this to break the tension. And that's one thing that stood out to me the first time I watched it, was being surprised at, like, you mentioned the snake. Yeah. And the deputy is like, oh, well, snakes don't have feet or whatever. Like there's just
Yeah, totally.
these funny little lines that are done straight. And there's another one which is a spoiler, but Ethan Hawke has this line later in the movie that's just, it's meant to be serious kind of, but I like laughed out loud. Like I just think the writing is very good.
Yeah.
And that deputy character is just a nice, I think he has a good chemistry with Ethan Hawke.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really like what they did with the deputy character, because the sheriff character is, to me, kind of the stereotypical cop that you see often in these kinds of films, where he's pretty gruff and he's professional and he's courteous, but there's no question in your mind as a viewer that he doesn't approve of Ethan Hawke's writing, that he's protective of his townspeople, that he doesn't want, they allude to it, but they don't say what happened. We don't want what happened in your last, place happening here. But the deputy is more sympathetic.
And he wants a taste of that fame too, I think.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I love the line where Ethan Hawke has been up all night and the deputy comes in and the deputy says, asks him the question, like, does your wife know?
Yes. Is that a spoiler?
No, I won't say anything else.
Okay,
He just asked, does your wife know about the situation?
Yeah.
And Ethan Hawke's no, and he's like, oh, I wouldn't want to be around for that conversation.
That's one of the best lines of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, there are those moments of levity, which kind of, and again, good filmmaking knows when to break the tension so that they can build it up again.
And this movie has a lot of tension.
Yeah. And it's not long after, like that's in the, I feel like, and I didn't look at timing, but that feels like it's this sort of the second act going into the third act, or it might even be in the third act already when that scene with the deputy happens.
Yeah.
And
all the characters just feel real. Like even the other cop.
Totally.
It's like, yeah, he doesn't want him here, but he's still like, he's not a complete dick. And he's still kind of likable. Like all the characters just feel genuine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even there's the point where the characters are Ethan Hawke is driving away, but he's driving a little bit too fast, and the sheriff pulls him over. And when he finds out like why he's been driving so fast, he goes, okay, well, I'll just give you a warning this time.
Yeah.
It does feel realistic. Like the performances feel like real people, like how they would behave in real life. I mean, despite the fact that their situation's not real life, but so was there anything, before we get into a spoiler section, was there anything that you wanted to talk about non-spoiler?
The only other thing that's kind of interesting about this film, have you heard the science behind this film?
Science? No, I haven't.
So, according to Forbes, Broadband Choice has done a scientific study where they had 250 subjects. They had to watch over 100 hours of horror movies, and they measured their heart rates during the film. And they did this for like hundreds of different movies, and Sinister is scientifically the scariest movie of all time.
That is ringing a bell. I wasn't sure where you're going with that, but that does ring a bell for me. Yeah.
So when they measured all the heart rates of them watching all these horror films, the average resting heartbeat was 65 beats per minute. Watching Sinister, the average heartbeat was 86 beats per minute, which was the highest. And then it hit a peak of 131 beats per minute. I think I know what scene that probably was.
I think so too.
But that's cool that they actually have found a way to sort of measure the fear factor of films, and this one is the scariest.
That's very cool.
Yeah, so we can objectively say that Sinister is the scariest movie of all time.
It's not The Exorcist.
Yeah, beat
or
The
The
Exorcist.
Omen.
Yeah. So that's cool. I think that's non-spoiler, but that's an interesting little tidbit.
Yeah, absolutely. So are we ready for spoilers?
I think so, yeah.
So I just had an upcoming thing spoiled for me.
Bagul.
Yep.
So this is the name. So we're in spoilers. This is the name of the, shall we call him an entity, a thing, a demon? And I love Vincent D'Onofrio's character in this. He's really good. He plays like a university professor or something who gives information to Ethan Hawke.
Now, does that make him not a good character?
Why?
Well, Well, do you feel like that character only has the very singular role of just like, here's all the background on the demon you need to know, and doesn't really have a role other than that? I've seen that criticism about this film a couple times.
Yeah.
That gets used in a lot of horror films. This was maybe one of the first ones where I can remember that being really egregious. Maybe not.
I know what you're saying. Like, I understand the criticism of, you know, it's a bit expository to just have this character that basically spews, you know. Having said that, though, I'm not sure how you would do it another way.
I do prefer this to like, hey, let's Google it and like, okay, hey, all this stuff.
Yeah.
Like at least this guy is meant to be like a cult expert or whatever, right? Who works at a university.
Yeah.
And he got his contact from the deputy, I think.
Yes.
So yeah, that's fine.
I mean, I do get it because that's the other way that you often see it happen is, I'm going to Google this.
Because the deputy has some of that.
Yes.
But he also is a character who has other things going on. Whereas this guy, that was kind of all he did. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, that was his purpose in the film.
Yeah.
There's no question there, but that kind of stuff doesn't necessarily bother me. I find I'm more bothered by the monologues where you get a whole bunch of expository detail in a monologue that is like, couldn't you have just, or a voiceover is even worse, right?
And at least he didn't know it all off the top of his head. He had to like go do some research and get back to him. And I guess you have to find out somehow.
I mean, I guess, and maybe because I really love this film, maybe I'm just making excuses. But to me, it made total sense that you would have an author who's checking in with an expert in a certain field.
That's true.
And that you're getting information. I mean, I know, having read a bunch of stuff about Stephen King, when he is thinking about, let's say, killing a character in a certain way, he often will talk with doctors about, that's his research.
Yep.
Well, if this happened, how would the body react? What would the body do or whatever? Like, that's what authors do. If you don't know it, you research it and you find a way to incorporate it. So no, that I don't have a reaction to that. I really like Vincent D'Onofrio as an actor. I enjoy seeing him in films. So I like the fact that he was there. It's a small part, but it plays the role in the big picture. I think it's just a piece of the puzzle.
Cool. Yeah, I was just curious to get your reaction.
Did you feel that? Like, do you feel that's a valid criticism for this particular film?
I noticed it, but then when I think about it, how would you do it differently or better? I struggle to. I think it's okay.
Yeah,
I don't think it's a big problem. But I know the idea of having it. This happens a lot in horror films. Like, here's this one character, and their sole role is just to give all the like background on whatever the evil thing is or the demon.
Yeah,
and it's kind of obvious and maybe a little lazy, but I feel like it works in this case.
I mean, I would say it's not the only way to do it better, but if I think about like Seven, where Morgan Freeman's character is in the library after hours looking things up and Brad Pitt's character is reading Cole's notes. I mean, yeah, but it's still showing that your characters are doing research in order to get further ahead in their
I prefer Seven's approach.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Right. But it's also a different film.
Yeah.
And that aesthetic. So here's why I think it was done in Seven is to further highlight the differences between Morgan Freeman's character and Brad Pitt's
Cole's
character.
notes.
Yeah. I mean, so the whole film is this, not the whole film, but a lot of the film is this dichotomy between these two characters and how they approach the investigation and all the rest of it. You don't have that here. You don't have anyone to bounce off of. There's no foil.
Yeah, and your point about
character.
this is an author and they're researching, and so it would make sense you'd reach out to an expert on the topic. Like that makes sense for me. Yeah. What do you? Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So, what do you think of Mr. Boogie?
I was gonna say, like, I love the look of him.
Yeah,
I think it's a very distinct, very cool look. I also really like the concept. I just like, I love the concept of, okay, you've got a demon who eats children's souls and brings them into his realm.
I like that too. I like the lore of it.
Yes.
I think I maybe wish that they didn't have like a physical manifestation of it. So I wish there was like Bagul in the whole thing, I just wish he wasn't like a character with like makeup and clothes.
Okay.
So I think it would have worked better if it was just like, it is that demon and it's doing all the things that it's doing, but without ever showing him or having him as like a character that you see.
Okay.
Because it kind of took me out of it a little bit.
So if we take that a step further, so if you didn't have him, and so would you still have the kids though?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I just don't know if you need the guy with like the black and white makeup and the suit hiding in like the bushes and the garage. And like, I really didn't like the scene where his face like turns on the computer screen.
Oh, see, I like that.
Oh, I thought, that's lame.
I thought it was kind of creepy.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, yeah, I didn't care for it, but
I mean, I don't like it as much in subsequent viewings as I did the first time.
Right.
I mean, because it's a bit of that breaking that fourth wall, right? But I don't know. I don't know that it would have the same impact if you just saw the movies and the kids. Like I don't know.
like it's something you refer to the demon, the still Bagul, he's still taking them. But I think when
But
it's
you never
left,
see him.
it's like, but that's sort of the thing, right? Like you can't, when you leave it to the imagination, it's scarier.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
Like I think I would find the demonic force more like malevolent and terrifying if I couldn't see what he looked like and he's like chilling outside the garage. He's burning these people. I also feel like the cynical part of me thought like, are they trying to make another horror icon in a franchise? And like, is this supposed to be the next like Freddy or Jason? Like to me, I'm like, are they, this guy has a very distinct look. I feel like, and the second Sinister, I haven't even seen it, but I heard it's just
I didn't watch
abysmal.
it. Yeah.
But my guess is that maybe they were hoping to build a franchise and have another horror icon, and it didn't quite pan out because Sinister 2 is such garbage.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, from a studio perspective, I can see, okay, we've got this character, we can, spin off a few films. But I kind of, I don't know. I liked his look. I found him to be pretty creepy.
He's creepy looking.
Yeah. And I mean, like you, I enjoy the lore. I like
that's all great. Yeah.
What they created there was really cool. So what did you, coming back to what you said earlier, because I think I know which scene it was too. I'm guessing it's a lawnmower scene.
That lawnmower scene is ridiculous.
It still gets me, even though I know it's coming.
Yeah.
But I think it's because it's like a flash cut.
Yes.
In the film.
They're milking it too. Like,
100%.
I really noticed it this time, like that sound goes on for a long time. And I think they show Ethan Hawke's reaction. He's like gyrating.
Yeah.
But it works. It's good.
I can remember jumping out of my seat the first time because you do. So, I mean, you're in the spoiler section, so hopefully you've seen this, but it's a great, like, so Ethan Hawke is watching these home movies and he's at the point, this isn't the first one, so he knows that something bad's going to happen, or at least he should know because he's watched several of these films. But it starts off like all of them do, fairly innocuously, and then there's this lawnmower on the grass, and then all of a sudden you see the quick cut, the flashes to people laying on the grass, and then it cuts away. It cuts to his reaction. And you know exactly, I don't even think they show a smidgen.
No, they don't show anything.
They don't show anything. It's all here.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, and it's horrifying.
There is like a scream or something, like there's an audio.
There's something,
as well.
yeah.
But the way they've lit it too, like it's all dark.
Yes.
On the
Except for
periphery, and it looks like there's like a flashlight or something over the lawnmower. Yeah, it's brilliant. I think that's up there with like Exorcist 3 level like jump scares. That must be the 131 beats per.
I was going to say, I can't think, I mean, there's some other jump scares, but
the Night Terror one, when the kid comes out of the box, is like a bit freaky. I think those are the two biggest.
I liked the scene too, where you see the ghostly hands on him, like pushing him
down. Yeah.
Through, do they push him through the floor?
Yeah. In the attic.
And I mean, there's just, I find I like films like this that do creepy little things like, he thinks he's destroyed the films and then he moves to a new house and the box is there. Like I like those little details because it's like, oh man, that would be so disturbing.
Yeah. And the snake and the scorpion. And it's funny. I wanted to be a herpetologist when I was a kid. So I like snakes a lot. So there's there's two types of snakes. One, it's red, yellow, black, and one's red, black, yellow. So they look the same. One's super venomous and will kill you. The other one's not at all.
Okay.
So if it's red, yellow, kill a fellow. Red, black, venom lack. So in films,
good for you.
I remember that from a kid. But every time I'm like, it's always red, black, venom black, like the ones they're using in the movie.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So it's meant to be a super poisonous snake, and it can be if the colors are going in the right direction. So anyways, they chickened out and used the non-venomous version in this film.
Interesting how like our life experience, we pick up different things. Right? That's so cool.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know what else to say about this. I mean, the performances were good. There isn't anything. I'm just trying to think of.
Well, I think the ending is amazing.
Yeah.
It's so dark. It's 7-level dark.
And that's one of the reasons that I reference. I was thinking of 7 in terms of the glitchy film kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the darkness of this, where you think, are they really going to go there? And they do.
Yeah.
And it's so disturbing to have this lovely little girl.
Yeah. And the one-liner, which could be cheesy, but is so poetic in this case, is "Dad, I'll make you famous again."
Yes.
And that's his sin, right? Is that he wanted to be famous, and she's giving it to him, but at the cost of like his life and his family. Like that, the way that all comes together is pretty brilliant.
Yeah. It's such a great ending to this. I mean, great in cinematically great.
This movie has so much going for it. It just is it's kind of everything you want in a horror movie, I think.
Now, yes, I agree with you. And I was trying to think to myself, so this is over a decade old. Do you notice anything that's aged? Because I don't. Like, do you look at it and go, that doesn't really hold up 10 years later?
No, I think as a horror film holds up very well. I think I had my little nitpicks, but no.
I mean, you can see the tech, like, I mean, his laptop is an old MacBook or whatever. You can see those things.
The only thing for me, and it doesn't matter when it happened, but just the idea that this like ancient demon is like making movies and like putting it on film with like editing and sound. Like, to me, there's just a bit of a disconnect there.
Yeah, there's no rationale for why you would do that.
Like, you would think there'd be like tapestries or paintings, or like the idea that he's putting these things on home movies is just a bit weird.
Yeah, and I'm spinning on, okay, well, maybe there's this. I don't want to speculate on why they may have done that. Like, I mean, because he is ancient, and I mean, who knows? Maybe he just started doing this in the 60s and he likes the 8mm. I mean, like, I don't know.
Like,
but
that part just seems kind of funny because
that's fair.
Because they're looking at those few at the end with the professor. There's like a tapestry. Like that, that's what I associate with like ancient demons and not Super 8 film. You should go back and watch it though and see if you noticed the soundtrack during the films.
I will. Yeah, because that's actually quite interesting.
And the sound's one of the best part of this movie, I think. The music.
Yeah.
It ramps up at different times, but it's subtle. It's not like The Omen where it's overbearing.
Yeah.
It fits really well with everything. And
speaking of sound, the sound of the projector,
that
gets more and more sinister, no pun intended, as the film goes on, because especially I think it's the last time perhaps that he sees it, when they're still in the house, the main house of the film, and you know that he's locked the door.
Yeah.
And he gets out of bed because he can hear the projector, and it's palpable. You can feel how upsetting, he knows that he's locked the door. He knows he's turned the projector off, and he goes and the door's open and the projector's running and whatever. And it's like, those kinds of things those inexplicable things are the ones that really get under my skin.
Yes.
I know like that wouldn't bother everybody, but for me, those are the kinds of things that stick with me. And
this is our genre. You and I both like the kind of demonic possession films. It's not possession, but.
Yeah. I mean, it is to an extent. I think Bagul possesses the kids to do what they do, right?
Yeah. Maybe it is. Yeah. Now, or just one other thing, I like how they use alcoholism as like a cue that he's already descending. Because it's hard to portray, especially relative to how he's been in the past.
Yes.
But there's that one little line where his wife's like, "Oh, you're already in the whiskey, and it's only been like 3 days."
Yeah.
You're like, okay, that's interesting because he's firing back drinks, and that kind of shows the like how down the rabbit hole he is already.
Exactly.
Actually, that's one thing we didn't talk about too. The big, or I think one of the best parts of this movie is the fact they've moved into the house where the murders happened, and you find out as an audience member early on that he knows that.
Yes.
The cops know that, but his wife doesn't know that.
Yeah.
And I found one of the juiciest parts was just kind of waiting to see what's going to happen when
100%.
she finds out. And I think she's really good. Like, I think her reaction is appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's believable.
Yeah.
And then I think one of the best lines in the movie, he's like, "It's not like anyone was murdered in our bed or anything." She's like, "Oh, so you're saying, oh, okay, so no one was killed in the house?" "No, it's in the backyard." It's like, what? Like, that's hilarious. But it's also like, it just fit really well with the whole scene. I think that was pretty great.
And there was another, coming back to that idea that I talked about earlier on about, a little bit of heartbreak as a parent happens in that scene where he says, this could be my legacy. And she's like, "You have a legacy. You have 2 children, right?" And again, I think there is some subtle commentary about, kind of not necessarily just a dad, but any parent who's driven and obsessed by the work that they do to the exclusion of their children, right? And yeah, I do think it was a very interesting and telling sign that they, had that whiskey thing in there, because it's a very subtle way of letting you know that this is progressing much faster.
Yeah.
And he's going down that road much quicker than other experiences that they've had. And that ramps up the danger of, okay, this is something serious that even though he's an experienced true crime writer, he's a bit out of his league in this one.
And him like going back and watching the tapes of him on these talk shows and kind of wanting to like relive that little bit of like fame that he had. It's funny because when I watched this the first time, I didn't have kids. I didn't even notice that coffee scene. And this time that was like one of the most like impactful scenes where he tells his daughter like, "Thanks for the coffee, dear." Like, he's not being a dick or anything. He's like, "Thank you," but just go away. It's
just neglectful, right? It's like not giving them any attention. And then, I mean, of course the other thing that they think they do really well is that reveal with the wife. I mean, in the very first scene in the film where he's talking to the cop, then his son draws something on the board at school and his wife is angry because she doesn't know where it's coming from.
Yeah.
And then his daughter paints something on the wall and she's like, "No, it wasn't me. It was Stephanie." And of course the mom's like, "Well, wait a second." Because it's the daughter who clues her into, Stephanie used to live here. And then she's like, whoa, she's starting to put the pieces together, right?
And they could have had you find out when she finds out and they reveal that, oh, they're actually in the house.
Yeah.
But I kind of like how they tip you off.
I do
at the
too.
beginning, you're just kind of waiting for it to explode.
It's a nice, because they do it in increments, right? When, I mean, it's that, it's that idea of knowing more than the characters do in the film. And I do really like how they do that, where they space it out over time. And then that also allows the tension to build, right? It's very well done.
Oh, the other line I liked, and you'll appreciate this, maybe you caught it as well. He's like, "I need to do something in my life with meaning. Like, I need to be a writer." She's like, "Oh, you could be a teacher." He's like, what do you say? He's like, "No, I can't be a teacher. I need to do something meaningful." I totally botched that, but he makes some joke about like
I do remember that.
Him wanting to find meaning in his life, and she suggests, "Oh, what about teaching?" He's like, "No, not teaching." So as 2 teachers, I thought that was funny. But
that was very good.
Butchered the delivery on the line. I don't quite remember it, but it was great.
Yeah, it was very good.
What did you think of the pattern of how, like, from house to house? Did you find that too artificial, or did that work for you?
Yeah, it worked for me.
Yeah, it's kind of a fun reveal when you're like, "Oh, okay," and he finds that out after he's moved.
Well, that's the thing,
so
right?
He's like, "Oh crap."
I mean, it's funny because I don't think even as an audience member, there is a reference to one of the families living in the house that one of the other families was in, but you don't know that it's a pattern for all the families, right? And including himself.
Yeah.
So I do like how they kind of drop that hint really early in his investigation, because, you know, he's got all the photos up and the yarn and all the rest of it. And it's not until he leaves and it's is it the deputy, I think, that reveals that to him on the phone?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, like this is how the pattern has worked. And then that goes right into the finale.
And you've accelerated the process or whatever. Yeah. I don't think this made either of our top 10 of all time list, did it?
No. And I really like this film. And I think this is the 5th or 6th time that I've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why it didn't.
I know for me, this flirts with that list. Like I could see this being kind of on there or very close to there. I think it is kind of the total package. And then it also has that kind of social message that we've talked about on top of it. Like it really fires on all cylinders, I think, for the most part.
I think it might just be, I mean, if I look at my favorite films, it's probably nostalgia in some cases that keeps them there, just because I saw it at a particular time or whatever. I can see this one. Yeah. Like it's very close to that list if it wouldn't be on it.
Mm-hmm.
So
like it's one of the movies when I hear about it, like I get excited, and I was excited to watch this again. And I think very highly of it. And I think it's a fun one to show people too, because there's just,
I've not had that experience. I mean, I have had the experience of, believe it or not, my stepdaughter and my wife hadn't seen Seven.
Oh, see, that's so fun.
And I think it was last year or the year before that. I'm like, are you kidding me? And it was on Netflix. So I said, come on, let's watch it. We got to watch it. Yeah. And it was I would love to watch this with somebody who hadn't seen it before.
Totally.
That'd be so, have you had that? Have you shown it to somebody who's never seen it?
Well, the first time I watched it, I guess I watched it with my family, actually.
Wow.
All of us, and none of us had seen it. So that was fun.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I've ever had the chance to now that I've seen it, show it to someone. But maybe I could show it in class next week or something.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Get fired the week afterwards.
Yeah.
Have a lot more time for podcasting.
Exactly.
So I guess we're both recommending this.
I think we're both recommending it highly. That's what I get.
Yeah, I think it's certainly one of the best horror movies of the 2010s. And as we just alluded to, maybe like close to our top 10s of all time.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very good. And I really like Ethan Hawke. I wish he did more horror.
But not Black Box.
But not Black Box.
Okay, so what do we have this mug here for, Mike?
Okay, yes. So if you've been listening or watching us for a while, you know at the end of each season, we do a top 10 list. And we've done our top 10 of all time. We usually do the top 10 of the year. We did top 10 found footage.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would like to keep the tradition going of having a top 10. And we've had some people request us to talk more about horror subgenres. So we thought, well, why don't we play with the idea of horror subgenres for a top 10? But there's so many to choose from. So what we've done is picked a bunch of different horror subgenres. So we've got slashers, we've got cosmic horror, we've got horror comedies, folk horror, etc. And we're going to shake it up and we're going to draw one. Actually, we're going to draw 3 just so. And the third one is what we're going to do for our top 10.
Okay. Yeah. So you know the rules. We're going to pick 3.
Just so you know that we didn't stack the cup and we're just going to read the first one.
Yeah, the one that we want.
It's 10 copies of horror
yeah,
comedy.
Totally.
They're actually all different, and we are actually doing this right now, and we're going to stick to whatever it is.
Correct.
And we tried to put in pretty much every horror subgenre.
Yeah, the only one, I mean, not that I'm sure you care, but the only one that we had a quick discussion about before this was we had hauntings and paranormal. And Mike said, oh, I'm not sure that I could tell a distinction between those two. And I was like, yeah, probably, because paranormal is mostly hauntings. Yeah. So anyway, we just put one of those in there. I think just hauntings.
Yes. And we've done found footage already, so that's not in there.
That's not in there either. Yeah. And we actually got rid of witches because we weren't sure we could come up with 10 witch films.
Yeah, 10 witch films. And then they would just be the only 10 we've seen, not like the top 10.
Yeah. So anyway, maybe another time. But
do you want to draw the first one?
I'll draw the first one.
Okay. So it will not be.
It will not be Dun dun dun. Cosmic horror.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Mike's super disappointed because almost everything Nicolas Cage has done is cosmic horror.
That's true. I could have put a lot of Nicolas Cage on
Okay,
there.
so that's not.
Are you secretly hoping for one or?
No.
No, you don't care.
There's some I like better than others, but I'm not secretly hoping for anything.
Okay. So it's not going to be horror comedy.
Oh,
I like horror comedy.
Yeah, I
There's
do
a lot
too,
of good
but
ones. But all right, so it's not horror comedy. It's going to be, we can put in a drum roll maybe in
yes, we
in
will.
editing.
Okay. So should I pick this
Yeah,
one?
go for it.
Okay.
Kind of excited. Anytime today.
Okay. Dun dun dun. I'm not even sure what this means. It's real life horror. Horror verite.
Oh, that's the one I was like, oh, I don't know about that one. All right.
Of course, that's the one we got. Horror verite. So can you explain? Because the list you gave me, this was my way of saying it. You said real life horror. So what are you thinking of when you're thinking of?
I'm thinking of something like my quick cut today, Speak No Evil. Because my understanding is like it could actually happen to you. It could happen to you horror, meaning it's based in reality.
Okay.
It's not supernatural. Coming Home in the Dark, I think was the other one we talked about. A lot of the Australian films I find are like this.
They tend to be like that.
So this could be a dark list. They tend to be very hard hitting.
Yeah.
Kind of hard to watch because they're based in reality. And actually this could be fun.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy though, because I can't think of very many off the top of my head that don't fall into a different subgenre. But I will do my homework on this one.
Yeah, me too. Maybe Speak No Evil will make my list. We'll see.
I think it will because there aren't going to be that many. It'll have to make your list.
You know what though? I think there actually are a lot. I find like almost every year there's one or two.
Actually, that's true.
And so I think. And like, there's films from like the 70s and stuff that go back.
100%.
Like, even would you say, like, Would I Spit on Your Grave fit in that category?
Yeah. Don't Breathe.
Yeah. So I think when you start digging, there might be a lot.
Yeah,
so yeah, this would be a good one.
Yeah.
And at first I was like, oh, I just hope it's not the horror verite one. But now I think it'll be good. So
Deliverance.
Yeah.
Squeal like a pig.
Ding, 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 ding. Okay. Well, anyways, I think we're wrapping up. So if you've not seen Sinister, I really think you should see Sinister.
Yeah. Run out now and go stream it and do whatever it is you do.
So stay tuned for our finale of season 5. It will be our top 10 horror verite.
Indeed. And
Or
until next time,
see you in the aisles.